Hello, and welcome to everyone joining across platforms, socials, and those watching in the future. My name is Jordan, and I'm thrilled today to kind of present Tipalti in partnership with the IGDA, Pay and Win. I wanted to start by kind of just mentioning our partner, Dr. Jakin. I think he put it best when he said that paying creators across borders should not become a barrier to supporting the people who really make gaming communities thrive. So I wanted to kind of start by just providing a brief intro of myself, my panelists today. So like I said, my name is Jordan. I'm an alliance manager here at Tipalti, focused on building relationships with gaming and technology platforms. And our Better Together story is you track, we pay. So closing the final mile of payments for our partners. I think this really aligns closely with the UGC and modding model. So looking forward to today's conversation. So yeah, with that, I'm kind of thrilled to introduce our panelists joining me as well. So we have my colleague, Travis Hewson. He serves as the EMEA business manager at Tipalti, equipping high-growth companies to navigate the complexities of cross-border finance. Drawing on extensive global industry experience and having lived in multiple countries, he brings deep expertise in international payments, multi-jurisdiction compliance, and scaling complex operational infrastructure for gaming studios, publishers, and platforms worldwide. Depending on where you're looking, Matt Merrill also joining us on the screen today. He serves as our principal of product and industry marketing at Tipalti, championing data-led automation strategies that help gaming platforms and publishers manage complex global finance ecosystems. With extensive experience spanning finance technology, market intelligence, and advanced enterprise solutions, he brings a seasoned perspective on how platforms and studios can eliminate operational friction and focus on building great games. So with kind of ending in games, I wanted to start by just having kind of a little icebreaker, helping our audience get to know us a little bit better. So I wanted to ask our panelists today, what are you playing, or what do you have fond memories of playing for our family man on the panel? I can start. So right now I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3. I'm in kind of the middle of my Dark Urge campaign, playing on honor mode. So that's where there's no saves and you just have to like live with the consequences of your actions. So having a lot of fun playing that with one of my friends back home. Also playing actually a lot of Slay the Spire, which is in kind of early access mode right now, trying to get to Ascension 10 and just trying to learn the game and kind of learn the new card system. Along with my wife, I'm also actually playing a lot of Balatro right now. So that's kind of a poker-based card deck builder. Just tons of replayability, a lot of fun, and we've been enjoying taking turns on that. So yeah, maybe Travis, if you wanted to start with what you're playing these days.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate the introduction. I'm a 90s kid, so I'm a little bit retro, a little bit vintage. I actually still have my original PlayStation 1 at my parents' place, so that's pretty fun. But yeah, back in the day, it was all about Nintendo 64, PlayStation, Super Nintendo, sorry. And then a couple years ago, I stumbled on Steam, and I saw they've got a pretty good collection of like arcade classics, so I dabble in that from time to time.
Any PS1 classics? I'm a Crash Bandicoot guy. Do you have any favorites?
Crash Bandicoot for sure, absolutely. Crazy Taxi Driver, that was PlayStation 2, and then 007 GoldenEye for sure on the N64.
Classic. Yeah, Matt.
Nice, thanks, Jordan, and hey, Travis. So I actually brought one of the classic games back the last few months. So I have an 8-month-old girl, and I had some time off for paternity leave, and I brought back Zelda Breath of the Wild. So I'm a 80s kid, and I go back to all the Zelda games, and Ocarina of Time is the classic, and I'm very happy that they're bringing that back for Switch 2 coming up. But did beat that again and decided to just keep it going with Tears of the Kingdom while we're still on that. It's a good mind exercise outside of all things Tipalti and global payments that we'll talk about today. But I think historically I was Xbox, so the classic Halo, and all the Nintendo games. But I am learning every time I talk with you, Jordan. I learn about new games. So and our gaming partners and our gaming clients, you all are keeping me up to date on them. Mine are a little bit more standard and historical, but they're still good. So love to talk with you all about all of this.
They're classics for a reason. And yeah, Zelda, Breath of the Wild, like I think just kind of foundational for finding so many different puzzles in the game, right? There's so many different ways you can solve things, and giving players the tools to do that. Very fun. Cool. So yeah, that's kind of the opening. We're warmed up. We're ready to go. Are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
All right, fantastic. So we're going to start by just kind of talking about the UGC boom, right? We've seen so much content being made by users in games like Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, etc. Every game wants to have a creator economy now. How did you kind of, or how does paying creators morph from kind of a boring back office chore into a core platform feature for some of these major games that are looking to make payments, not only in UGC and modding, but also with affiliates or creators that are working on those platforms and those games?
Yeah, I'm happy to take a stab at that to begin with, Jordan. So for context and just so everyone's kind of on the same page, I'm going to come at this mostly from a United Kingdom and European perspective, but obviously our partners and our gaming clients are global. UGC is actually a really interesting conversation. I've done a few topics on it with a few different conferences across Europe, but it's essentially a relatively low cost way to expand the reach of your audience when you're launching a game. So right out of the gates, you're kind of setting yourself aside from other big names that kind of rely on the old school way of marketing. And then like consumers trust who they trust. So even though it's not super technical and not super scientific, but if I have an influencer that I follow on social media that I trust, I might pay more attention to it versus the stuff that gets pushed at you and you see it's an ad and you kind of just scroll right by it. So it's a really unique way to communicate with a very small demographic, but a demographic of people that are actually going to want to play your game.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, so a little bit of a background. I cover product and industry marketing at Tipalti, and the two areas that I focus on, really it's all ecosystem marketing. So I look at all of the industries that Tipalti works with, and then on the product side, I cover all of our ERP integrations. I bring this up because I think there could be a misnomer related to gaming that there aren't traditional back office needs. But at the same time, it's a very unique industry in that payouts to these creators, to developers, are a core function of the business. So I'm tracking, we have a lot of different industry verticals at Tipalti: software, nonprofit, healthcare. And typically those back offices are more traditional finance. You have your controller, your AP clerk, et cetera. And you could consider those as cost of doing business departments, keeping the lights on kind of thing, even though they become more strategic over time. And absolutely the office of the CFO has become even more strategic in 2026 than it was in 2021 when I started at Tipalti. But I think it's unique with gaming that it's such a value driver, being able to pay out developers and creators across the globe. So I'm tracking this from a industry perspective, and then how does the overall ecosystem handle this? So I think what I'm excited to talk with you both about today, and what we talked a lot about leading up to this, is just how we got to kind of change the framing of this. I think that because of this boom, it's more core to our gaming partners and to the gaming companies that we work with than it's ever been before. And so finding ways to pay them, and I have some comparisons that we can make. There are other industries that act similarly, and Tipalti's been able to help them as they scale. But let's move on. But I think this is something that we can keep coming back to.
Yeah,
it's important how it's evolved.
That's a great tee up. And Travis, I kind of like what you mentioned about, expanding the reach of the audience through, UGC, as well as just expanding the life cycle of the game, right? If you think about a traditional game, sometimes the infinite replayability wasn't there. But when you have fans and people that love these games coming in and creating more and more content, games like these can stick around essentially indefinitely. And just sorry to bring you, I guess, into my background and why I'm here kind of moderating this panel today. My background was in sponsorship valuation, specifically for the esports industry. So helping brands, leagues, teams, and rights holders understand the value of their brands, whether they're appearing on broadcast and social or on on-site events. And then just past that, I also spent some time at a company doing basically understanding the audience that was watching these across multiple different platforms. And we were also a influencer marketing agency. So we worked with new games that were looking to launch and build kind of creators into that launch for all the things that you see on Twitch these days, right? So new people coming in and playing a game, those are by design, right? A lot of those folks are there because they've been identified as having the right audience for those games, to kind of bring the messaging from the gaming companies to a more wide audience. So that's kind of where my background is in my interest. But kind of going back to kind of what you said, Travis, and talking about the growth of these platforms and the reason why UGC is kind of expanding so much. Do you think there's any like trap cards, or like what kind of platform leaders fall into some of these challenges with payouts, or what's the thing that everybody assumes is really easy, but then it happens to break at scale?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something I have to be quite delicate and dance around when I'm talking to different business leaders in the space. Most people in gaming are builders at heart, right? So the initial response is, we need to do something, let's build it ourselves. But when you get into like the nitty gritty of the back office finance department, it's essentially the heart of the organization. So if you just start going and poking and prodding and trying to rebuild a valve, you might run into some problems. So that's typically like the first entry point, is the build versus buy conversation. And we do try and like remain very empathetic along that, right? I don't want to come in and disrupt your flow and say your developers aren't good enough to do it. But when you start talking about the complexities of paying people worldwide and the repercussions, the compounding potentially negative effects if you aren't able to pay them, that typically outweighs the risk versus reward. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about this more in detail later on, but that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind for me.
That's a great point. Look, I've been with Tipalti almost 5.5 years now. So it's about half the life that Tipalti has been around. And for the first couple of years before I joined, a lot of the work that Tipalti was doing is a lot of the back office, or let's say behind the scenes work of laying the foundation of our global payment rails. These are things that you can't just build day to day. And I empathize with developers. I mean, your job is to build things, but leveraging companies that do this all the time will save you time to focus on your core business. And then we understand how important these payouts have become, because it's not just to suppliers, even though almost all the industries that I cover, there's global suppliers somewhere. So that being able to leverage that's important, but it's the end-to-end automation. It's everything. It's managing the suppliers. It's the tax forms up front. It's, do you have the ability to pay in 200 plus countries and territories? Can you handle financial close? Does everything sync to your ERP seamlessly? And that's something that I handle over here at Tipalti. So there are a lot of other areas to keep in mind as your organization grows, as you need to pay more developers globally. It's not a simple fix. And look, we work with big gaming companies, and they're a lot more than I can mention, but a few that I can mention just off the top that your audience will understand: Blizzard, EA, Crazy Games, Discord. These are ones that have the developers and the, let's say, the bandwidth to build something if they felt the need to, but they understand we need to focus on our core business. Let's get the games out, and then we can handle the payments with the experts.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about scale, right? And talking about gaming scale. as a Canadian living in the US, I just know how hard it is. Like, even if I want to send money back home, there's Interac e-transfers or, email transfers in Canada. But then when you move to the US, everything is, Cash App or Venmo, or it's done through apps. And cross-border transactions, super challenging, right? Hard to send my parents money, or, likewise, maybe I'm asking them for more money than I'm sending back home. But can you paint us a picture of this chaos? Like, how many creators are we talking about that are involved in these programs? Or what are some of the local currencies that you're managing in a campaign, or from a platform perspective when these kind of events and campaigns take off? Can you describe to us how many creators are we talking about, or what's kind of the volume of payments?
I can try. I think for context, though, Matt at the beginning mentioned that we work with a lot of different businesses that have similar challenges to gaming, and there's a lot of cross pollination. So that lens that we take going into the conversation with the gaming companies and the distributors and the publishers is front of mind for me and my team to try and help uncover the complexity, because every business is going to be different. Crazy Games that Matt mentioned is a really good example. My team was a part of that project, and we can't go too into detail with it, but the high level scope of was, how do we strategically move into a new market? And more importantly, how do we protect the money we're investing to gain the traction in that market? And a lot of it came down to the end result was, can you pay the creators? Can you pay the developers? Can you pay the people that are, delivering the game or delivering the marketing to drive attention? And if you can't do that, then you can't scale, or you can't scale at mass, or you're going to scale and you'll just be in the red and lose all your money. And I think everyone on this call today can agree that the number one thing we're missing in gaming is money to spend to build the new game, to release the new mod, so on and so forth. As far as the volume of creators, or the currency complexion, or the tax complexion, which I know we'll get into shortly, Jordan, it is kind of tough for me to throw a number out there. But what I will say is, the moment you start making money outside of whichever country you've kind of launched that platform or that game in, you're automatically opening the door to challenges. And going back to the build versus buy conversation, that's where Tipalti really comes in. We've invested years of sweats and tears and money into building, a platform and a product that can deliver swiftly and at scale. And I think just, whether it's Tipalti or not, doing your own research, understanding the potential roadblocks you're going to walk into before you publish the game, is probably the best bet. And if we're a part of that conversation, amazing. If not, at least we're encouraging you to go and do your own research.
No. I buried the lead because I have a gaming chair, actually, this and a seat.
Yeah.
Despite not being as much of a gamer as Jordan, just because of time, but at heart, I still am. So, but just to add to what you were talking about, Travis, the complexity is very interesting with gaming, and how many different types of payments you have to make. So whether you choose to build or invest in a solution like Tipalti, you have to ensure that they can make all those types of payments. And we're talking about non-invoice back payments, invoice back payments to vendors, pay in every country that your developers are across the globe. But then it gets even more complex. There's influencer payments, there's creator payments, there's tournament prize payouts at times that we can handle, developer royalties after the fact and keeping track of those. We have lots of situations like that. Affiliate and partner commissions, that's very similar to in ad tech. In advertising, with Tipalti, we do payouts. Just think of all the ads you're getting on social media constantly, and pay per click. And then it's just typical vendor and supplier payments that every business has to do. So regardless of whether you're looking to build something or invest in a solution, you should make sure that it's a flexible platform that can handle all of those types of payments to any country and to whatever currency is needed. But then and I think we'll talk about this more in a little bit, but that you're also taking into account the hidden challenges like KYC compliance and tax compliance. Those are the other things that you aren't typically thinking about. You're just saying, let's make sure we get them the money so we keep it going. But on to you, Jordan.
Yeah, and KYC being know your customer, right? So knowing who it is that's making these payments, You just can't send money into the ether these days. There's governments, there's tax reporting. So really understanding who's making the payments and having a platform that's going to be able to come in and do some of the regulatory work for you, I think is kind of what we're trying to emphasize here. So, and we've mentioned some of the pain points, right? Some of the challenges. Let's talk a little bit more about growth. How can we kind of turn payments or kind of financial infrastructure into a growth strat versus just a headache? Do you guys have a sense of, in working with, some of our customers and partners, how they've framed that or what they've kind of taken away from, automation platforms like Tipalti to really look at it as this is actually going to drive growth for my company versus it's just going to solve problems?
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually pretty excited to talk about this topic because I'll go to the end. We've had a few customers that have actually turned this into a revenue stream. So there's a lot of really fun things you can do with it. But if you kind of break it down into 3 sections, and this is how I like to approach it when I'm talking with, a prospective customer or a customer that's with us and is ready to make the next step. The moment you look at payouts as a competitive strategy, when you talk about like the specific TAM you're trying to go after for that game, is the moment you win. So to work it backwards, if I'm a top creator and you're trying to get my attention to help progress your game, what's the one thing that'll plant a seed of doubt or make it so I'm a little bit hesitant to work with you? And that's typically the money piece, right? I want to get paid. I want to know that I'm actually going to be paid for my efforts. So having an engine, essentially a payment engine that you can rely on and isn't going to break under stress. And the stress I'm talking about, that critical mass piece, is when you get to a point where it's no longer manageable by one individual, or the possible risk of human error becomes too great. That's that kind of critical point. The second piece is that friction kills velocity, right? Slow onboarding, and when you're dealing with tax complexity, depending on where they are in the world, potentially language barrier, the list kind of goes on there. If that aspect is quite slow and there is friction there, as a creator, I don't have time to deal with that because there's multiple other platforms I'm trying to work with. The affiliate space is a really good example of that, right? You have one good affiliate might work with 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 platforms. I'm not going to spend time, if it's 5 minutes or more, trying to onboard myself, right? That needs to be automated. That needs to be clear. And then the last place is the scalability piece, right? We see it time and time again, going back to the build versus buy. Sometimes the purchase side is made with dollars and cents front of mind. I don't like to use the word cheap, but sometimes people cheap out. Whether it's in your personal or professional life, you might not make that investment. Matt's chair is a good example. I'm sure that wasn't cheap. He bought it on purpose. It's comfortable to sit there for a long time so he can focus on the game rather than getting sore, right? And that's good for the game maker because then he's playing the game and potentially spending money while he's doing it. So having that scalability piece with quality at the front of mind is going to be the difference maker for you. Because if you're expanding into new markets that require local payout methods and require different tax complexities and have, again, the language barrier that I talked about, without trying to add additional headcount to your finance team, that's where the difference maker is. And that's something that we've done really well as a business, but also our competitors do really well in some cases too, right? Like they have designed it to a way where the consumer is interested, but they know the value. The difference between Tipalti, not to sound too biased though, is the global scalability piece. We've mastered the ability to take a business from Europe and take them into the UK and to Asia and to North America and beyond, and not have to put the burden on the finance department where they have to hire local representation and someone to do the transcribe or the translations for them. The list goes on. I digress. I'm rambling now, but hopefully that kind of paints the clear picture.
No, definitely. And just not a lot to add to that, but when you're looking to invest in a solution like this, you should think about it in 2 ways. It's what will put the least strain on my current finance resources for handling day-to-day vendor operations. So payments, just to keep the lights on, like I said. But then turning it into a profit center rather than just a cost center requires a flexible platform that's end-to-end platform and that has global reach. So that's difficult to build and that's difficult to replicate. And that's, I think, where we definitely separate ourselves from other options out there, whether it's status quo and building your own, going through a bank, or any of the other competitors, maybe card-only solutions that are promised, it's very easy here. We just give a card per department, all good to go. But the end-to-end piece that, what happens when you you set up a new developer studio in Georgia? And I'm not talking about in the US, I'm talking about like Tbilisi, Georgia. Do you have to hire a new finance team, speak the local language? Do you have to sign up for a new solution or a local bank to be able to actually pay them? If you're not doing that, are you paying through your own bank? And then there's a lot of extra charges that are on that, so that's affecting your bottom line. So it seemed cheap in the initial framing whenever you decided to set that up, but then once you actually start to operationalize it, the costs start to add up. Or do you have a flexible platform that can handle both your ongoing vendors, but then also those pay-per-click and affiliate payments and developer payments that become revenue generators and a core piece of your business? Can that investment handle both? So that's the question as you're evaluating it, or as you're recommending solutions to your customers. That's how I would look at it comprehensively. So everything from overall supplier payments to the areas that can be profit centers, and then really look at it from an end-to-end and global perspective. And then that'll help you point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I love it. And kind of, Travis, to go back to what you said, because I think now we've kind of covered this subject from, a platform perspective, a developer perspective. But you mentioned something around kind of friction kills velocity. And we know these days, lots of creators and modders, they have options, right? There's different platforms to build on. There's different games to promote, and people have kind of wide audiences that are receptive to a lot of different things. So can you talk to us maybe a little bit about how does a smooth branded payout experience stop that star talent from quitting the platform and moving to a competitor? So kind of from the perspective of creators that are looking to participate in this ecosystem.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is like the retention piece for your creators, right?
Yeah.
It's a really good topic, and the reason why it is like so top of mind for business leaders and CFOs is consider that they've invested a lot of money to get that individual to be on their platform. So the retention piece is not only about retaining them as the individual, but it also retains their revenue because it's driving traffic to the game. So a couple like really easy fixes that we've seen make the big difference for our clients, and it's really not rocket science. Self-service autonomy. So a lot of businesses kind of fall into the trap where they think, I need to almost hold Travis's hand through the process while he onboards himself. But the fact of the matter is if you just brand the portal with your branding, you have some real-time tracking, you give them clarity on what the payment method is going to look like and the costs associated, they're pretty quick to do so. The reason that's important is it gives them the absolute clarity on where their money is, right? Like that trust and transparency is really, really critical. And then the cost, right? Like there's been multiple cases where we have micropayments in the space, right? Which to be honest, isn't an area that Tipalti really plays well, because if we're talking about making a $1 payment, but I need to make it down to, LATAM region, there's a big cost for any business to do that. But what we have seen is if you kind of put in stop micers where, as a creator, I'm not going to get paid until I hit a certain threshold. Maybe it's $50, maybe it's $100 or more. It gives me as the creator motivation to stay on the platform and keep grinding and keep making money. But also as a business, it's a bit of like a cash flow management piece where you're not just releasing tiny payments out there into the ether and paying a huge margin to do so. Or worse, if I'm down in one of those regions that like really depends on that money, taking a bunch of money from me as the creator just to get it into my bank account. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece is around the fees, and I doubled down on this because that's a big differentiator between us and some of the other providers in the space. Is the hidden fee structure. That's not something we do with. We're truly honest about the cost to make that transaction. We're truly honest and upfront with the creator on how much it's going to cost them to get the money. But we also do something a little cheeky in the background, is we give the business or the gaming studio or whoever's making that payment the option to carry some of that fund. So however they don't want to divide it, let's say it costs $1 to make the transaction, is you, a business, want to take on 60%, and then me as the creator only have to pay the 40%? No problem. And we give that transparency up front. And that really does help from a retention piece, because if I'm said creator, I know exactly what I'm getting into. I know exactly what's needed for me to get on board. And then I know exactly how much it's going to cost.
Yeah, just one note on that. I mean, Travis covered this great, but the flexibility of the payment infrastructure that Tipalti is giving developers and gaming studios to be able to compete with the enterprise level ones. This is similar to when we work with a lot of other industries where we work a lot in the mid market. So companies that have a wide reach and a big impact on the economy, but less headcount, less resources. It's really investing in a flexible payment infrastructure that can handle the nuances that Travis was just mentioning. Like, who's going to cover the transaction cost? Not many are going to be able to give you that a level of flexibility. And like I said, being able to make whatever types of payments you need, whether it's the profit center or the cost center. And we're getting really good comments too from people that are seeing the same thing in their space now. The flexibility is key.
I literally just looked at the chat window I was like, oh, are we actually getting live comments on this right now? But no, we're good. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about, creators specifically and how this works in an ideal world, right? With everything functioning. Can you talk to us a little bit about when payments lag or drop? What are some of the challenges operationally with like what that nightmare can look like for a company that's trying to now deal with some of these issues at scale behind the scenes? Like, what are some of the things that they might have to look at if people are entering in the wrong information, if they haven't filled out kind of their payment methods? Like, what challenges can that create for a company?
Yeah. We actually, genuinely, I'm not just saying this for the sake of the recording today, but we literally had a CEO reach out to us today from Cyprus, and his main comment when he submitted the request form was, I've got so many bounce payments. I don't know what to do. I don't think I can afford it. Can you guys help us? So I think the first thing is like just recognizing the operational chaos that you're walking into. A lot of the people in this space don't have a finance background, or they're not a big enough team to justify having a finance department in-house. They might rely on an outsourced business or team to help them. But going back to the onboarding piece that we touched on in the last comment, Jordan, this is kind of where you start to see the compounding effect in a positive light on having a streamlined, frictionless structure to begin with. Because during that process, we're collecting all the banking details for our clients. There's the compliance piece and like the regulation piece where that's a big benefit because you're not liable to hold that information. But it's giving the creator the autonomy to give the right details from the get-go. And that's typically like where people see the friction points is you're a little bit complacent going through the motions, and then all of a sudden it's time to pay me as the creator. And I live in the UK, so and you're in the US, for example, and then you now have to figure out how to pay me. But I gave you the wrong details, and you've already sent the money, and now the bank is coming at you with a rejection fee. And then me as the creator, going back to the retention piece, is a little bit upset because I'm missing that that paycheck. So it's kind of like just a growing storm if you think about it.
Yeah.
There's the other side of things is like the financial belief for the business, right? Wire transfers are expensive. FX fees are expensive. Rejection fees are very expensive. So if you add all of this together, not only do you have an unhappy creator, you've got a game that's potentially at risk because the audience you're depending on to play it is no longer getting that visibility. And you've got to deal with, making payments to the bank or your providers in a negative light. So it's not good. Going back to the buy versus build conversation, invest in your business or take the cheap route. This is where that starts to kind of rear its ugly head. And the old saying, it's not mine, but free is expensive, right? And this is the perfect example of that.
And I wanted to check in with you on what you mentioned. So if I'm a creator who's looking to onboard to a platform like Tipalti, or it could be another finance automation company, what might that look like in terms of, hey, I'm not familiar with like what details I need to enter. Does that notification come up immediately? Will it say, hey, you've entered in some incorrect information, or does that happen at the point of payment processing? What does that look like?
So it happens well before the point of payment. So that's a really good point. But we'll look at it from two lenses. One lens as the business making the payment, the other lens as the payee receiving. A lot of the times, it's a completely different vertical. Music is a really good example, right? We're paying out royalties in the music space, and we have an artist that potentially passed away, 10, 15 years ago. It's legacy music. Someone still has to get the royalty payment, right? So a lot of the time when we start to work with these labels, they'll come to us and say, hey, we actually haven't been able to pay this individual or this agency in years because we don't know who to talk to, or we can't get in touch with them. So part of Tipalti's process is auditing your information that you have on your current payees, and then streamlining the process going forward. So if you have the legacy data, we can take care of it. That's not a problem, but we'll set you up for success going forward. As far as the process for the creator, it's very simplistic. It's a 4-step process. Typically in this space, companies want to have it as an iframe on their current onboarding process or their own website. You don't even know it's Tipalti. It's no indication that it's Tipalti at all. Fill in your name, your address, where you are in the world, how you want to get paid, and then make sure you're okay with the specific payment method that we're offering, which varies depending on region, and away you go. Very, very straightforward. And then the other piece, not to ramble, but tax is a big thing, right? Some creators, if they're big enough, they have to worry about, in the UK, their VAT number, or in the US, W8s, W9s. That in itself can be an absolute headache for the finance department. I've got a ton of customers in the UK and Europe that have no idea what a W8, W9 form is, but they have a bunch of suppliers or a bunch of payees in the US. So we've automated that process, we've digitized it, and any individual can go on there and update their information. And then to your last point, Jordan, the communication piece is really critical, right? If I potentially put in the wrong information and Matt as the business isn't comfortable to pay me, there is a way to initiate communication from Tipalti to the creator instead of having to manually go find my email address or my phone number and call me. And that's all tracked in the system, and we've got ways and methods to ensure that I'm not payable, in quotations, until Matt is satisfied with the information he has.
Now you mentioned, oh, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to say, it's really good points. Like it really is just about removing friction wherever possible. I came back from vacation and my wife is on Verizon and I'm on AT&T. And I don't know if anybody saw in the news, but in the LA area, Verizon had an outage on Sunday. So we came back and realizing she has no service at all. No big deal once you get on Wi-Fi. But the reason I bring that up is to the companies that we're talking about right now, payment infrastructure is as critical as cell service or electricity. But it's a utility that is also core to your business and how you gain revenue, and it becomes a profit center. So it's very unique in that sense. So when you're choosing the right solution, you have to make sure it's taking care of both the utilitarian aspect of it, the boring side, but then also the ability to frictionlessly pay those creators, those developers across the globe, just like Travis was saying. And it's the little things, it's the onboarding, it's the tax forms, it's that stuff.
Yeah. All right. It's been mentioned a couple times now. I've heard tax, one of life's unavoidable conversations. We won't talk about debt today, but we will talk about taxes. So let's get into it a little bit and kind of tackle, one of the ultimate boss battles, global tax compliance, right? Fun. So can you tell me a little bit about what goes wrong when a fast growing platform tries to handle W8s, W9s, IRS withholding, or other even, that's mostly talking about the US, but trying to do all of this in a manual spreadsheet? What does that look like? And why should companies generally try to avoid that?
Well, I'll start by saying as a disclaimer, I'm not a tax professional. So anything I say here is what I've seen in the field. It's not, it's my opinion. It's not necessarily scripture. So apologies for that if there's any tax specialists on the call. But I think the biggest thing that I have seen is the human error at scale. Right? We all know spreadsheets are nice. They aren't scalable. Right. So if you're relying on a spreadsheet or a Google Sheet or whatever that might look like to kind of hold that sensitive data, and then you get to year end and you realize you have made an absolute mess, like that is going to cause a problem for you. And then the digital validation is another big piece that we're really going into right now, like trying to get ahead of the curve. One thing that we do see in this space is you might have a creator that's relatively new into their career, and in the UK they don't know their VAT number, so they might say no, right? And you as a business might just be okay with that, but when it does come to the year ends and you've paid them 50 to 100,000 pounds for their work, the government's going to want their piece. Someone has to pay that tax. So that does become a big problem for businesses as they start to close their books. And then you start to, someone in the chat says you need a tax lawyer. Exactly. That's exactly what you need. You do need to lean on the specialist. But what Tipalti has done is, we obviously, and Matt can probably talk to it in a bit more detail, but we've got a lot of partners in the space. We've got a lot of experience with businesses, all shapes and sizes globally. And we've got a relatively good idea of what that blueprint looks like to help you navigate the world of tax. But I don't know, Matt, if you want to, chime in a little bit here on that.
Yeah, I'll just, how I can add to this is it's not just about the WH-9s, the VAT forms, all of that, but that's something we collect and that's part of the onboarding, and you're not getting paid unless you're providing that. So that already is a stopgap. So just being able to ensure that the forms are there up front, and that's not something that any creator or developer would balk at. They understand, like, yeah, absolutely, I need to provide you tax information. It's just changing the order of things. But there's hidden areas where tax comes up more. So I manage all of our marketing for our ERP integrations. So many organizations that are paying attention to us right now, potentially you're on QuickBooks, NetSuite, Sage Intacct. It could be a number of things, but it's potentially QuickBooks, and you have multiple instances of QuickBooks. You're a growing organization. You're figuring out ways to stay compliant. Well, does the platform that you leverage or that your team built to make payments, does it sync tax codes at the line item in your ERP? Because that's something that we ensure does that. And trust me, I'm in many very boring calls every week, keeping track of how we're doing with tax codes by country for every ERP that Tipalti covers. So this is the back end stuff that I was talking about in the 10 years that we've been around and building our payment infrastructure that you wouldn't have to worry about necessarily. And then just being able to leverage our payment infrastructure from the get-go for whether it's to keep the lights on or it's to keep profit coming. So those are the things in the background that we're making sure are taken care of.
Yeah.
And then beyond text, you've got kind of identity checks, sanction screenings as well, right? It's not just about, compliance from hey, we need to report our earnings at the end of the year as a creator. We're also looking at kind of some of the landmines of underinvesting in global know your customer or anti-money laundering when they're sending cash to creators in dozens of different countries. Can you talk a little bit about how you might be able to mitigate some of that?
Well, real quick, I'll just jump on this one, Travis. That on top of that, we're also doing OFAC screening. So going through the OFAC list, making sure there are no sanctions, making sure you're not paying any bad actors. I saw stuff in the news today, a couple different orgs that were considered nonprofits in the US are getting flagged and realizing that they're all actually making payments for something else. Well, we're keeping track of that, and we're making sure that any new third-party developer or potential vendor that you're working with across the globe isn't one of those. That will then create more headaches down the line. Just like you talked about the hidden costs, the hidden taxes of just doing business. First of all, having a battle with legal with a country about a tax bill is one hidden headache that you want to avoid as your company is growing. But then also accidentally paying somebody that's on a sanction list is something that you also want to avoid, because that's going to tie you up in litigation too. So all of these things just add up to friction potentially that can face your organization, and those are all the areas that we work to get rid of and to make things as smooth as possible.
Yeah. If I may, just to add really quick onto Matt's piece too, because I know a lot of the conversation today has been about, okay, how do we protect the creator so they continue to work for you and continue to spread the goodwill of the game? One thing that is a massive differentiator of Tipalti without sacrificing quality of that sanction screening that Matt was talking about is our KYC process is actually just directly with the gaming company, and we don't run a KYC on the individuals we're paying. I'm happy to talk about that more in detail at another time because it's not really today's main theme, but it is a huge differentiator because, again, we're not putting friction in place of that relationship with your creator, but we're also still protecting you. And it's a double-edged sword for us, right? Like, I can't sell to Palti if we don't have our licenses. So, and our licenses are strategic and the heart of our business as well too, right? So just keep that in the back of your mind too. As you scale globally, as you go into different markets, you are opening yourself up for more risk. And having a partner you can depend on that's not going to create friction for the sake of it, but also have your best interest in mind is really important.
Yeah, and those risks, it sounds like, come in the form of dollars, legal bills, lost dev cycles, or time spent actually working on the product, engineering time, and then that creator trust and goodwill, right? Talking about, again, folks that are in the affiliate marketing or creator space, having some of these challenges and failing the fight around compliance can lose and erode that trust with people that you want to have working for you consistently, right? So yeah, let's kind of move on from taxes, since we don't want to bore our audience too much. I think maybe a couple people dropped off, but they're coming back. They're coming back for this next section. So let's talk about like build versus partner. And I know us three, we discussed this in advance and wanted to make clear that we are not saying don't build your own solutions. We know the audience here. You're builders. You want to make stuff, but we want you to build what you want to build. We've already done the legwork in building kind of around payments. We become a licensed money transmitter, which is no small feat. So really, we want to focus this section on, again, helping you build what you want and then partner where it makes sense, where you don't want to spend time on your business, right? So kind of when building, building your own payment rails, is this just like a massive sinkhole for engineering talent? Like, should they be spending time on trying to build payment rails themselves? Or what have you seen kind of from your perspective?
I'm happy to take a first stab at this, Matt. Yeah, I think it's a really fun conversation to have with business leaders and game developers, right? I mean, it's almost the badge of honor trap. If I could come up with a better term, I would. But yeah, there's two things to think about, right? And only two things from my perspective: opportunity costs and is it worth your time? So if you just break it down to sprints, every sprint that you're dedicating to trying to build a payment rail, to trying to set up KYC flows, to try and create some sort of tax engine is a sprint taken away from core gameplay or platform features, right? The other piece, like I said, the badge of honor, people love to build. Engineers love to build. And if a business leader comes to the team all hands and says, hey, we've got this problem, we're thinking about either buying versus building, someone might raise their hand and say, you know what, I'll take a stab at that. It might be just something that you're interested into. It might be a career progression play, whatever the motivation. I would strongly suggest that you take 10, 15 minutes and just look at the complexity, but further down the line, figure out when that critical mass will come into play, because that will rear its head. We had on the affiliates train, we did have our conversation, we did have a customer 2 years ago, and it was a bit of back and forth, a little bit flirtatious, if you will, between us as the sellers and them as the buyers. And eventually they said, hey, Travis, look, we really appreciate the time your team has invested in this project. We've gotten our products that we're building in-house the 70% mark. We're going to take it and go live with it. And it was successful for about a year and a half. And then recently they came back, and I wouldn't say their heads were held low. They're really proud of what they did, but they said, hey, we hit that wall that you talked about. We've kind of gotten to that critical mass, and our CEO and our investors are pushing us to go into this new market, and we don't have the capacity nor the capability. The other thing is someone's going to hold the keys to that product, right? It goes back to like legacy on-prem technology, that data debt or the technical debt that businesses talk about. We made the move to the cloud 10 years ago, right? Like finance automation is still topical for businesses that are Fortune 500, 150. Like that to me is crazy. It's because someone in the business has the keys to this legacy tool they built, and it's more expensive to try and walk away than it would be to fix it. So I would just strongly encourage every game maker, every CEO of a game developer, publisher that I've ever talked to believes they're the next big one. Don't sell yourself short. Don't pigeonhole yourself for 10 years from now because you wanted to try and build a payment rail. Come to us.
So much to comment related to that, but you covered it all. But I mean, the general thing, I love when we talk about opportunity costs. Former econ major for a long time ago, but it's true. Opportunity cost is real. But let's say you want to still build something and give it a shot. Like there's a lot of cultures and different orgs. It's like we'll build it first, and we do this sometimes too. But what I'll say is, you decide to build something, you're still going to leverage some type of third party, no matter what. So it'd either be a bank, or it'd be a third party payment processor, or it would be something else that's going to add cost and time. And yes, you may be enticed by an initial, hey, we can stand up a new platform in 2 months, especially with AI now. We're great at that. But that's a one-time sprint. You made it happen. But then there's the ongoing maintenance. There's the ongoing maintenance of actually keeping the payments alive, the tax compliance, the onboarding piece, all of that stuff that is our full-time job over here. So those are the main things. So where to draw the line is, look, there are still opportunities to customize this for your own purposes. So whether you wanted to create your own page that for all of your creators or streamers or developers to access, that links to Tipalti's supplier onboarding, white labeled supplier onboarding. We've seen every version of this across every industry that I cover. So there's still opportunity there, and to make this really customizable for your own business and for your needs. But no matter what, you're always going to have to leverage some type of third party, and there's an ongoing cost that tends to weigh down a business. So focus on what you're really good at, making games that Jordan is on all the time, and finding ways for new dads to be distracted by Breath of the Wild. That's what we need while we cover the actual payments and the hard stuff in the background.
Yeah, I'm not going to give my Steam handle or Discord handle to anybody, because then, my colleagues here at Tipalti will see how much I'm actually playing, I'll keep that one quiet for now. But yeah, I think you're really driving home. It's like building tech is a one-time sprint. Compliance is live ops forever, and it only gets bigger and it only gets more challenging as you scale, right? So I think both of you guys have driven that home. And I guess what I wanted to ask is kind of a closing section to talking about building versus partnering. Is there any part of the payment infrastructure or maybe tracking of who needs to be paid that's actually worth building, or is kind of partnering a no-brainer? Like, how should companies be looking at other aspects of what they want to track from modding and UGC versus how they're maybe to your point, Travis, building up a tracker to essentially say, hey, we want to pay out when a creator gets to $50 or $100, like you mentioned. What's worth building?
Yeah, good question, Jordan. I think that's pretty subjective depending on the type of monetization you're doing as a business and who you're paying and why. On the threshold piece, that's something we can do natively within our platform. So that doesn't even need to be a tracking tool when it comes time to pay. But most of the time, we partner. We work with Jordan. We work with your team to try and find other technologies that can do that job and do it well. Because this whole conversation is like not spreading yourself too thin, right? In the music space and even in the gaming space, when it comes to like paying royalties, we don't track that. We leverage third-party partners to help us figure out who needs to be paid and how much they need to be paid. So yeah, if you really wanted to invest and build something like that for your business, it might be worth the squeeze. But again, I would just default to do the research, see if there's a platform out there that can really handle your scale, knows your business, knows what you're trying to accomplish, and then look that way. I'm always biased to partnering, though, to be honest, which I know probably might not resonate with the crowd, but I do feel in the world of tech, like that is kind of the safe route and the scalable route.
I think that was a really good thing to bring up, Travis, because I don't think we've talked about this enough. So not only do we partner with gaming partners and developers and IGDA, et cetera, but we also partner with compatible and complementary ISV solutions. So like Avalara for sales tax, or Flowcast for FP&A, they're Tesario for AR. So we're not saying we do everything, but we are the core payment engine for global vendor and developer payouts. That's a huge piece of it. If there are areas that feel that they're missing, then that's where we work in these ecosystems. We go to these conferences. I have multiple per year. We know what the latest technology is, and so much of it this year has been about AI native, and there's a lot of exciting things happening, and you're going to see new features come out faster because of AI and how that's adding to it. We're going to see more games come out because of AI and how that's adding to the ability to develop this. And I'm sure you're all tired of hearing about that, but if there is a competitive, a comparable solution that is required, we have the partnerships out there to complete it. But for what we're talking about today, and what for the normal developers out there, what they really need, we have it covered.
Yeah, and this is obviously where I become interested is, in the partnerships and alliances that we can build. Being an alliance manager at Tipalti, coming from a software sales background, I was really intrigued by moving into this role to just understand like how we can build relationships, right? That's kind of the main focus of, what my core role is finding companies out there where we can help close the final mile of payments for them and build better together. So that's been a really interesting pivot for me in my career. And I've really been enjoying, just the challenges that come alongside two companies that are looking to come together and build something that expands beyond both of their capabilities. I think it's a really exciting time to be in alliances, and specifically at Tipalti, been working with a lot of great partners and hopefully can drive some interest from, the attendees or people watching this in the future to give me a shout, give our team a shout, and talk about how we can build something together. So I think with that, I am seeing a couple comments coming in. So we're going to stop kind of the prepared section of this and move into our Q&A. And we'll take a look at, some of the questions that have been coming in from either folks on Twitch in the chat or people watching from a variety of other social platforms. If you're in the future watching this, I'm sorry I can't take your questions now, but send me an email and we'll get back to you. So yeah, let's take a look at some of the questions. I'm just trying to find them. Give me one sec.
So there's one about thresholds and about follower count. If that's something that we are managing it, or if we're managing that, I think we covered that in terms of being able to set payment thresholds by number of payments or dollar amount. Incentives for playing and streaming certain games.
So that's actually a really interesting one on the follower count piece. So I'll just chime in really quick. We work with a number of gaming companies, affiliate companies, freelancer companies that do set certain thresholds on the follower count, but I wouldn't say that should be the default narrative. More about the niche, right? Like, for example, I don't have a huge following on Instagram, nor do I follow a bunch of people, but I still typically get hit with the right ads the other day. Like the old school arcade Area 51 game, where you shoot the aliens as they're kind of coming towards you from the buses. I got hit with an ad the other day to play that as like a game on my phone, and absolutely I downloaded it. And then I looked at the person that posted it, and they've got 1,200 followers, right? Kind of random. There's probably some botness in there and some AI-ness in there, but I wouldn't say that should be the leading indicator for if you work with that creator or not.
That's a good point.
We have another one here. I think we covered this, but maybe just a brief overview on kind of what the onboarding experience for a new team that adopts the solutions look like. What does that onboarding look like for somebody, seeking kind of finance automation and an ability to move away from those manual spreadsheets?
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure if the context is if you're the payee or the finance team or someone who's
let's go from the finance team's perspective.
Finance team? Yeah, great. So we spend a lot of time and investment on our onboarding team. I would say the majority of our workforce is post-sale, which isn't the norm in this space. So there's a bunch of people that kind of hold your hands that are in your geo that can talk to the specifics. And then a successful project on our side isn't until you're actually starting to make payments on the platform. So consider the amount of hand holding and coaching and training you'll get in that process. And like anything in life today, we try and simplify it and automate it as much as possible, but we're not losing the human touch. And then we're also very respectful and empathetic to your current situation. So if you do have a bunch of legacy payees that we need to onboard, that is a big focus of the project because, again, we want to ensure the retention. We don't want to disrupt your relationship. So we make sure to take our time. There's a lot of nuances I could go into. I don't know if I want to take 10 minutes to talk about it, but I think it was Jakin who asked it. If you want to send me a message or an email, I'd be happy to talk to you about it in more detail.
No, that's a good point though, because I think what many people would be looking at is evaluating an end-to-end comprehensive global payment solution like Tipalti that can handle vendor and these mass payments, these non-invoice back payments to creators or developers, or taking a cheap approach and doing like cards or something that's an easy, by next week, we'll give virtual cards to all of your different departments. You're up and running. So those exist, sure, but that's going to take a long time first to reconcile all of the payments, but then there's no connectivity to it, and there's really no automation to it. You're creating a new manual process versus we take the time in onboarding. Like I evaluate across all of our ERPs, all of our industries. I don't consider that an actual new customer until they're making healthy live payments on a regular basis and actually seeing value from it. I won't even track that until they're actually fully implemented. So there's that full team that Travis was mentioning behind the scenes, making sure they're going live. And then on the actual payee side, it's that self-service supplier onboarding is a huge piece of it. And that's more about speed, getting them up and running quickly and making sure they're compliant. And we have that all covered as well.
Yeah, so going back to Rodabo's comment, just around choosing a supportive payment infrastructure that understands your vision, doesn't matter if you're a developer, publisher, or content creator. 100% agree, right? It's not only from like a partnerships perspective, but also from an end user or customer perspective. You want to work with people that understand your business. I think that goes without saying. So I don't think a question of this group, but just kind of agreeing with Rodabo on Twitch. Also looking at Astral Gamer's comment on Twitch. So
I love this one.
Platforms or teams that are still small and haven't hit kind of that mass payout scale yet. Is this worth solving for now, or does it make sense to wait until the platform reaches a certain size? I think, great question. Thank you, Astral Gamer.
I'm happy to take the first stab at this. So Twitch wasn't Twitch before Twitch was Twitch. And the point of that is small is subjective. So I would just encourage you to be curious more than anything. Do the research yourself, do some asking around. But the other thing to really consider is how much time are you and your team spending on today's mass payout scalability. If you're spending more time than you're willing to invest on it, it's the perfect time to look for a provider or a partner in the space. And then from our perspective, we're non-biased. Like we work with a ton of businesses that are quote unquote pre-launch, right? To help them build up the infrastructure and get them ready to be at a point where they can go out into the market versus companies that are like a Twitch making tens of thousands of payments on a monthly basis. And our platform, our functionality doesn't change. So that's the other big piece of the puzzle, right? Is if you're looking for someone to go on that journey with you and start small and get big, you're in the right space.
Perfect. Yeah, great. I think a great place to close. So yeah, just wanted to again thank everybody for attending today, again across platforms, watching live or in the future. Wanted to also thank our panelists, Matt and Travis. You guys did a great job today. Thank you for being here for this discussion. Shout out to our partner marketing team, Jen. You've been fantastic. Thank you for helping us put this together. Thanks to Parker, Dr. Jakin, and the overall partnership with IGDA. Really looking forward to kind of building with you together. And we've got lots more initiatives coming beyond just this webinar. And also wanted to shout out Women in Games International as well. If you were coming to our audience today through IGDA, and you're interested in another organization doing great things, give them a look as well. But thank you all for your time. And looking forward to the next one, everyone.